Today we're going to be dissecting a recent, and frankly, very revealing monologue from Nick Fuentes. This monologue is significant because it's not just another rant. It's a raw, unfiltered look at a leader realizing he is becoming a prisoner of the very movement he created. It's a case study in the inevitable contradictions that arise when a political project built on ideological purity collides with the practical need for power and influence.
Listen, I've never talked to Steve Bannon, okay? So any discussion of a Bannon-Groyper alliance is premature, okay? Bannon retweeted an article about me on Parler a few weeks ago. We agree on some things about Vance, about Israel. That's really where it is right now, okay? So let's everybody just calm down. First of all, and I love when people say, why would we? Who the fuck is we? Who's we? There's no we here, okay? You are not red-pilled. You were not red-pilled until you watch my show. So we don't need to be making any decisions. Me needs to be making decisions about the political stuff.
This opening is absolutely perfect because it reveals everything wrong with Fuentes' entire political project in one burst of narcissistic rage. Notice how quickly he abandons any pretense of leading a movement when his authority is questioned. The moment someone in his audience suggests strategic thinking, Fuentes immediately retreats into pure authoritarianism. There is no weak because Fuentes cannot psychologically handle the concept of collective decision-making or shared leadership. This is classic narcissistic personality disorder behavior, the inability to tolerate any challenge to personal authority, even from supposed allies. He claims credit for red-pilling anonymous commenters, as if political consciousness can only flow through his personal brand. Notice the shift in language. It's not "we" anymore, a term he explicitly despises unless he's using it to build his brand. It's me. He's revealing the raw, unfiltered core of his belief system. This isn't a movement of ideas, it's a digital fiefdom with him as the king. He positions his followers as children who need to be told what to think, because only he, the great leader, is capable of strategic thought.
But don't give me, why would we? Who's we exactly? I don't know who you are. You're an anonymous person. I don't even know if you're a Groyper. I don't even know if you're a fan of the show. So there will be no we, okay? I am the leader. I am the charismatic leader of this movement.
You don't often hear someone say the quiet part out loud with this much confidence. A true charismatic leader usually doesn't need to announce it. He has built a following that requires him to be the central, irreplaceable figure. But now, that very following is trying to hold him to the standards he created. They took his rhetoric seriously, and he's in shock. He's not angry that they disagree, he's angry that they have the audacity to think they are part of the we on a decision-making level. Fuentes knows his own authority is hollow, so he attacks others for lacking the same institutional legitimacy he desperately craves but can never achieve.
I am the one that called Trump, you are a fucking idiot, but I love all this stuff. People come in, we need to do this, we need to do that. You are not a strategic thinker. You are not in politics. I don't know who you are.
Francesco sent $100.
And Bannon's no better than Trump. You're wrong. Bannon is way better than Trump, in a certain sense. Trump is bringing in 600,000 Chinese students. Trump wants to get us in a war with Iran, with Israel. Bannon has been critical of all of that. So, like I said, I don't know the guy. I don't know if I trust the guy. But let's not start drawing lines. What's the goal? It's only I'm isolated. And I'll tell you something. The Groypers' tendency to isolate me from everybody, it's becoming a bit of a problem. I need allies. Not you are an anonymous person. If this thing doesn't work out, you go and get to live your life. This is my life. The buck stops with me. I'm the one taking the slings and arrow. I'm the one with gunmen showing up at my house. I'm the one that doesn't have a bank account.
Fuentes correctly identifies that Trump serves establishment interests that contradict his base's preferences, but his solution is to potentially ally with Steve Bannon, another establishment grifter who played a key role in Trump's original rise to power. Fuentes can't escape the gravity of the very system he claims to oppose because he fundamentally misunderstands how power actually works. He thinks politics is about finding the right personalities to support. Fuentes portrays himself as making heroic sacrifices for his anonymous followers, but the reality is that he's built a career out of being professionally controversial. His sacrifice consists of getting paid to say inflammatory things on the internet while his followers are the ones who face actual consequences for associating with his brand of politics. That gunman showing up at my house reference is telling. Fuentes wants credit for facing dangers that are largely consequences of his own publicity-seeking behavior. Real political leaders try to minimize risks to their followers, not maximize their own martyrdom narratives.
So on some level, this is not going to be the lunatics running the asylum here. And this boxing me in, if I let the lunatics run the asylum, I couldn't talk to anybody, because you could say anything about anybody.
And there it is. The pivot from my loyal followers to the lunatics. Who are these lunatics? They're the people who form his core audience. They are the ones who donate, who share his clips, who fight his battles in comment sections. But the moment they offer a strategic opinion that boxes him in, they are downgraded from the Praetorian Guard to inmates in an asylum. This is an incredibly revealing look at how some online figures view their own audience. You are useful as a number of you and a voice of support. The second you become a strategic equal or a critic, you are a lunatic who needs to be managed. He wants the benefits of a loyal, radicalized base without any of the ideological accountability that comes with it.
You could say a lot of things about a lot of people. And pretty soon I'd have no allies, I'd have no platforms, I'd have no anything. And all this would ever be is me playing the greatest hits to the biggest fans. And that's not progress. What I want to do is move the ball down the field politically, and that means that we reach a mainstream audience. When people say, you're walking back your opinions. That's literally, I did a show yesterday and said, we need to reassure people that we're not hateful and full of resentment, but we actually want to make society better. And people said, why are you selling out? If that's selling out, you have lost the plot.
He built his brand on being the guy who tells the hard truths, the one who won't compromise. He fed his audience a steady diet of ideological red meat. Now, he's trying to explain that in order to actually win, you have to reassure people, you have to appeal to the mainstream. But his audience, the one he conditioned to reject any form of compromise as selling out, is now doing exactly what he taught them to do. He's acting shocked that the guard dogs he trained are barking at a stranger he's trying to invite inside.
But if that is not channeled in a productive and prudent way on a long-term timeline with tangible results, then what the fuck are we doing? I am in the game of empire. I am in the game of building an empire. I'm not satisfied with my large audience of diehard fans. We want the whole country to be on board with us. Yes, the diehards are an important part of the cavalry, don't get me wrong. But I'm not satisfied with just playing the greatest hits for the most radical 1%.
This is where Fuentes' delusions reach truly comedic heights. He's not building an empire, he's running a niche podcast. The gap between his grandiose self-perception and his actual political relevance is staggering.
We are trying to move the needle of an entire nation. Don't you understand that? We're trying to move the needle of an entire country. And then once we do that, we're trying to move an aircraft carrier of a power structure. How do we do that? We're going to have to reach a wide variety of people, very intelligent, very elite, very sophisticated, from different backgrounds, not necessarily racial, but from all different walks of life.
We suddenly reappears when Fuentes needs to inflate his importance, despite spending the first part of his rant explaining that there is no we. This inconsistency reveals how his authoritarianism serves his narcissism rather than any coherent political strategy. He alternately dismisses his followers as irrelevant when they question his judgment and elevates them as part of a historic movement when he needs to justify his grandiose ambitions. Followers are simultaneously essential to the mission and powerless to influence decision-making.
And it can't always be piss and vinegar. It can't always be raging, veins bulging, and I'm not even that guy. I'm not even doing that for purely tactical reasons. I'm not even that guy.
This section exposes the core contradiction of Fuentes' entire project. His brand was built on being the edgy, uncompromising voice for white nationalist politics. But now he wants mainstream respectability, which requires abandoning the very extremism that gave him his platform in the first place. He can't have it both ways. Either he's the radical voice speaking uncomfortable truths that polite society won't acknowledge, or he's just the same old mainstream political talking head. Fuentes has spent years building a media brand that does exactly what he's now criticizing, stroking egos and validating opinions without producing tangible political results. The fact that he's now recognizing this problem doesn't mean he has any solution for it.
George Washington was not somebody who's filled with resentment. This was a towering figure before he was a general.
This is, without a doubt, the most unintentionally hilarious part of the entire rant. The sheer audacity of this comparison is breathtaking. He's in the middle of a tirade against his own followers on a live stream, complaining that they won't let him be friends with Steve Bannon, and he has the galactic-level ego to invoke George Washington. He's not leading a revolution against the British Empire, he's trying to manage his parlor mentions. Washington was a general, a statesman, a founder of a nation. This guy is a content creator, and his biggest battle is with the chat window. By comparing himself to a towering figure like Washington, he reveals his deepest desire to be seen not just as an entertainer or commentator, but as a genuine historical figure. It's a level of grandiosity that is both sad and incredibly funny. He's not building a nation, he's building a brand, and he's confusing the two. Fuentes exhibits every classic symptom: grandiose self-perception, inability to handle criticism, exploitation of followers for personal validation, and complete disconnect between his self-image and objective reality. The most damaging aspect of Fuentes' psychology is how it prevents any genuine political organizing. Real movements require collective decision-making, shared sacrifice, and subordination of individual ego to group goals. Fuentes is psychologically incapable of any of these things. When his followers try to engage in strategic thinking, he immediately reasserts authoritarian control. When they question his judgment, he attacks their legitimacy to participate. The empire-building fantasy is particularly revealing because it shows how disconnected Fuentes is from actual power dynamics. He thinks influence means having people listen to your podcast, not understanding that real power means controlling resources, institutions, and decision-making processes. His audience might find his content entertaining or validating, but they have no material reason to follow his political direction because he offers them nothing concrete: no jobs, no community resources, no institutional support. The respectability politics pivot exposes the fundamental hollowness of his entire project. Fuentes built his brand on being the guy willing to say what others wouldn't, positioning himself as more authentic and uncompromising than mainstream conservatives. But the moment he realizes that extremism limits his growth potential, he immediately starts moderating his message and attacking his own followers for wanting consistency. The George Washington comparison is where his delusions reach clinical levels. Comparing running an internet podcast to founding a nation reveals a complete break from reality. Washington faced actual physical danger, made actual material sacrifices, and built institutions that outlasted his lifetime. Fuentes faces mean comments on social media and occasionally gets his bank accounts closed. The broader lesson here is about how social media incentives can destroy political movements before they even begin. Fuentes rose to prominence by generating controversy and collecting online followers, not by building real-world organizational capacity. His entire understanding of politics has been shaped by digital metrics rather than material outcomes. This creates leaders who are optimized for viral content generation rather than actual governance or coalition building. Many of Fuentes' followers have legitimate grievances about economic displacement, cultural change, and political representation. But instead of developing serious political responses to these issues, they've attached themselves to a personality disorder case study who exploits their frustrations for personal validation and financial gain. Fuentes doesn't solve any of their problems, he monetizes their problems. This is ultimately what failed leadership looks like in the digital age. Instead of organizing people around shared material interests, charismatic narcissists build personal brands around emotional validation. The result is political movements that exist entirely in digital space while remaining completely irrelevant to actual power structures. Fuentes Meltdown reveals someone who finally recognizes that his approach has reached its limits, but lacks the psychological capacity to change course. His authoritarian instincts, narcissistic grandiosity, and complete disconnect from reality make him fundamentally unsuited for the kind of coalition building and institutional work that real political change requires. He's trapped in a prison of his own personality disorders, and unfortunately, he's taken a lot of young men with him.
Who the fuck is we? Who's we? We, there's no we here.